enter the ICU ROC study. This checks all the boxes for a good critical care study. It was randomized. It was large. It was multi-center. The only thing that would have made it perfect is if it was double-blinded. The clinicians had to know what oxygen that they were giving, so it was only single-blinded. Let's talk about what they did in this study. They enrolled 1,000 patients, a huge ICU study. They had the conservative group, and for this group of patients, they were keeping the SATs greater than 97%. And if the SATs were greater than 97%, they decreased the FiO2 by 10% every 5 minutes until the SAT was less than 97%. In fact, they tolerate SATs up to 90% before they increase the FiO2. The other group was the liberal group. And in this group of patients, any SAT greater than 90% was allowed, and they didn't want the FiO2 to be less than 30%. So again, in this group of patients, they were trying to keep tight control of the FiO2 on the ventilator, and on this side of the curve, they were being very, very liberal and allowing clinicians to do really whatever they wanted to do. Here's what they found. Their primary outcome was the number of vent-free days. They found no difference whether the clinicians use a conservative or a liberal strategy. Their secondary outcomes were mortality at 90 days, no difference in mortality. In fact, there was no difference in mortality at 180 days. There was also no difference in cognitive function. Now, they did some subgroup analyses, and I know what you're saying, subgroup analysis is kind of like meh, but with such a large number of patients, it is something to think about, and it is hypothesis generating. Of patients who had an ischemic or hypoxic injury to the brain, they found that the patients in the liberal group had worse outcomes compared to the conservative group. The conservative oxygen group had better neurologic outcomes. So it seems like for people who had an ischemic or hypoxic injury, too much oxygen might be harmful, and this is in line with some of the other studies that we've seen before, especially in patients who were post-cardiac arrest. Another subgroup that was interesting to point out were patients who had sepsis. These patients actually did better when they had the liberal oxygen.